Imagine for a moment a world drastically different from the one we know today. A world where one of history's most brilliant military commanders, Napoleon Bonaparte, accomplished what many believed impossible, a successful invasion of Britain. Instead of being decisively defeated at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, what if Napoleon's fleet had broken through the British naval blockade, crossed the treacherous English Channel, and landed tens of thousands of French soldiers on British shores? How would this singular event have unravelled the very fabric of history? Would the British Empire ever have risen to the global dominance it achieved? Would English still reign as the dominant language of international diplomacy and culture, or would French have taken its place? The ripples of such a moment would stretch across continents and centuries, reshaping the world in ways we can scarcely imagine. At the dawn of the 19th century, Britain was the undisputed maritime superpower. Its powerful navy was the key to its vast empire, which stretched from the dense jungles of India to the cold frontiers of Canada, from the fertile lands of Australia to the tropical islands of the Caribbean. British ships controlled the seas, securing trade routes and colonies that fueled its burgeoning economy and political power. Meanwhile, Napoleon, fresh from sweeping victories across mainland Europe, had his eyes set on breaking British dominance, yet his ambitions were shackled by the Royal Navy's supremacy. No matter how powerful his armies were on land, without control of the seas, he could never successfully invade the British Isles. Now, let us venture into an alternate reality. Picture the Battle of Trafalgar, not as a British victory, but as a French triumph. Napoleon's fleet outmaneuvers Admiral Nelson's ships, securing control over the Channel. The foggy English coastlines witness an armada of French vessels unloading thousands of battle-hardened soldiers onto the beaches of Kent and Sussex. The British, confident in their naval invincibility, are caught unprepared. The army scrambling to respond is insufficient to halt the swift French advance inland. Within weeks, the heart of Britain, London, trembles under the shadow of Napoleon's advancing forces. Napoleon's genius lies not only in battlefield tactics, but in governance and propaganda. Once in control, he swiftly establishes a new order. French law replaces British statutes. The culture of the Enlightenment, already prominent in France, spreads through British institutions. The monarchy, either forced into exile or dethroned, becomes a symbol of a bygone era as France installs a puppet regime loyal to Paris. The world watches in disbelief as the invincible British Empire bends its knee. With Britain under French control, the global balance of power collapses. British colonies, once tightly connected by oceanic trade routes and governance, find themselves isolated. India, the crown jewel of the British Empire, faces the arrival of French administrators. The British East India Company dissolves under French pressure, replaced by new French governors, eager to spread their language, laws, and culture across the subcontinent. Imagine the vibrant cities of Calcutta and Bombay echoing with French instead of English. Catholicism and Napoleonic legal codes influencing society deeply. Far across the Atlantic and Pacific, Canada and Australia, severed from British rule, become theatres of French influence. The French language spreads like wildfire, shaping education, law, and even everyday life. The global dominance of English begins to wane as French becomes the official language in many former British territories. This linguistic shift profoundly alters global communication, science, and diplomacy in the centuries to come. Europe itself becomes a French-dominated continent. With Britain out of the picture, the coalitions that once resisted Napoleon lose their most vital supporter. Austria, Russia, and Prussia face Napoleon's armies with dwindling resources and morale. Napoleon enforces the continental system more effectively, choking British trade and expanding French economic influence. The Napoleonic Code, with its revolutionary ideas on law and society, reshapes European nations. Borders are redrawn, monarchies replaced by client states loyal to Paris, and nationalism takes on a different hue. The Industrial Revolution, which had its birthplace in Britain, now takes root elsewhere. With British industry disrupted by occupation and war, France accelerates its own industrialization efforts. French inventors and engineers receive state support to develop technologies in textiles, metallurgy, and transportation. Paris, Lyon, and Marseille grow into bustling industrial hubs. The steam engine, railroads, and mechanized factories emerge with a distinctly French character, fueling a new wave of economic growth. Across the Atlantic, the Americas feel the shock waves of this upheaval. The United States, no longer under the shadow of British colonialism, forges a closer alliance with France. The Louisiana Purchase never occurs in the form we know it, and territorial boundaries between the US and Canada evolve differently. French influence permeates American politics, culture, and law, especially in the eastern regions. The fledgling nation might develop a political system more influenced by French revolutionary ideals, altering its democratic experiment. Major global conflicts change dramatically in this new world order. The Napoleonic Wars stretch on longer, without Britain's naval and financial support for the opposing coalitions. The map of Europe remains under French dominance for decades, preventing or drastically altering the alliances that led to World War I. The ideological battles between monarchy, empire, and democracy take new forms. Without Britain's example of constitutional monarchy and parliamentary governance, democracy's spread faces different challenges, and nationalism develops in unpredictable ways. Would the world speak French today? Almost certainly, yes. French would be the language of diplomacy, literature, science, and international affairs, the cultural institutions we associate with British influence. The Commonwealth, parliamentary traditions, legal systems would be replaced by a francophone world order rooted in Napoleonic ideals. Imagine the great novels, films, and music shaped by French traditions dominating global culture. The 20th century's geopolitical landscape would be unrecognizable. The United States might emerge as a francophone power with different political ideologies. The Soviet Union's rise and its relations with a French-dominated Western Europe would follow a different course. Even the outcomes of the world wars would change as alliances shift in the face of new power structures. This alternate history invites us to ponder profound questions about identity, culture, and power. How much of the world's current state hinges on the success or failure of one naval battle fought more than 2 centuries ago? How fragile is history, shaped by moments of courage, strategy, and sometimes sheer chance? Napoleon's failed invasion remains one of history's greatest turning points, a reminder that the future is never certain. So the next time you think of the British Empire's incredible rise or the legacy of Trafalgar, remember that history could have been rewritten had Napoleon set foot on British soil. The world might have spoken French, worn French customs, and lived under a very different order. And that single moment of victory or defeat shaped the modern world in ways we continue to feel today. Expanded sections for more depth. The strategic importance of the British Navy. The British Royal Navy was more than just a military force. It was the backbone of British identity and economic prosperity. At the time, controlling the seas was akin to controlling the arteries of global trade and empire. The British Navy not only defended the homeland, but ensured that Britain's colonies remained connected, governed, and supplied. Its power allowed Britain to impose naval blockades that crippled enemy economies and safeguard the trade routes for its own goods, including tea, cotton, and spices. Napoleon's inability to challenge this naval dominance was a critical factor in his downfall. Despite his brilliance on the battlefield, he lacked a strong navy capable of confronting the British fleet head-on. The Battle of Trafalgar was a clash not just of ships, but of global ambitions, and it ended with the Royal Navy's supremacy confirmed for decades. The Battle of Trafalgar, a turning point. The Battle of Trafalgar was fought on October 21st, 1805 off the southwest coast of Spain near Cape Trafalgar. The combined fleets of France and Spain, numbering around 33 ships, faced 27 British ships under Admiral Horatio Nelson. Nelson's innovative tactics, courage, and leadership led to a decisive British victory, but he paid for it with his life. Now imagine if the battle had gone differently. What if the French and Spanish fleet had used superior numbers and strategy to break the British line, capturing or sinking key ships? This would have opened the way for Napoleon's planned invasion, Operation Sea Lion style, across the Channel. The consequences would have been enormous. Britain's island status, which provided it natural defence, would be shattered. The cultural transformation of Britain. Napoleon was not only a military leader, but also a reformer who sought to export the ideals of the French Revolution: equality before the law, secular governance, meritocracy, and centralized administration. His Napoleonic Code was revolutionary in establishing civil law principles that are the foundation of many modern legal systems today. Under French occupation, British society would undergo radical reforms. The entrenched aristocracy and monarchy would face serious challenges. The Anglican Church's power would decline as secular French laws and Catholic influences took hold. Education, art, and philosophy would see a surge in Enlightenment ideals, and the British people might find themselves gradually adopting the French language as the lingua franca of governance, education, and commerce. The fate of the British colonies. Britain's global empire was vast and complex, relying on efficient communication and military power to maintain control. French control of Britain would disrupt this entire network. In India, the British East India Company had established a commercial and political empire by 1800. French governors would dismantle the company's monopoly and introduce their own administrative systems. This might have led to a different trajectory for the Indian independence movement, possibly more influenced by French Republican ideals. In Canada, French influence would reawaken strong ties to Quebec and expand Francophone culture across North America. Australia, still in early stages of colonization, would evolve under French law and culture. The Caribbean islands might see renewed French colonial competition with Spain and Britain's remnants. The shift in global power dynamics. With Britain subdued, France would emerge as the preeminent global power. The European continent, now unified under French dominance or client states, would experience a different political and economic development path. The spread of nationalism, liberalism, and socialism would be refracted through the prism of French revolutionary ideology rather than British parliamentary traditions. The Industrial Revolution, originally British, would accelerate in French cities. Paris might rival Manchester and Birmingham as the world's leading industrial centres. Technological innovation, economic theory, and political thought would centre on French ideas and institutions. Impact on America and beyond. The United States, freed from British influence, might become a closer ally of France. The cultural and political influence of France's revolutionary heritage could lead the US to adopt more centralised or even authoritarian models, contrasting with the decentralised federalism that emerged historically. Canada and the US border would be redrawn under French influence. The Louisiana Territory would remain French, affecting westward expansion and Native American relations. Longer-term consequences and reflection. As centuries passed, the world shaped by a victorious Napoleon would develop in unpredictable ways. The 19th century's political ideologies, imperial rivalries, and social movements would unfold differently. The 20th century, with its world wars and ideological conflicts, might see new alliances and enemies shaped by this alternate power map. History is a fragile tapestry, woven from countless moments. The fate of a single battle, Trafalgar, shows how contingent our world is on chance, leadership, and strategy.